Hello, and welcome to our Global Fleet Champions webinar, Effective Leadership for Safe and Healthy Mobility in Fleets, sponsored by Lytx. Global Fleet Champions is a partnership campaign administered by BRIC, the road safety charity, to prevent deaths, injuries and pollution caused by vehicles driven for work. To learn more about the campaign and what we do, please visit globalfleetchampions.org. At today's webinar, you will learn why it's so important to put fleet safety first and the benefits of doing so, what effective leadership looks like, and which measures employers need to introduce for safe and healthy mobility in fleets. On your screen now, you should be able to see a multiple choice question poll so we can find out your views on this topic. It is anonymous. Simply select one answer and press confirm, and we will discuss the results at the beginning of the Q&A session, which is your opportunity to ask some of today's presenters any questions you might have. You can put forward your questions at any time during the webinar by using the chat box on the webinar panel. Thank you for your time, and the webinar will now begin.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining this webinar. My name's John Mills, and I'm really pleased to be talking to you about the importance of putting safety first. I'm a truck driver at heart, but with a background of academia, logistics management, and the last 15 years in telematics, mobile workforce and safety solutions. And the one common thread throughout these 15 years is that technology solutions are not a silver bullet. Strong leadership is essential. You have to engage, live and breathe the safety values day in and day out. Taking a proactive approach to driver safety has been at the heart of Lytx Solutions for over 20 years and borne out by our successful deployments to over 500,000 vehicles and nearly 900,000 drivers on our safety program. We believe that changing risky behaviours here means that you can modify driver behaviour before they get into a major collision, and that's the preventative nature. And our view, and that of our clients, is that the adoption of a strong safety culture alongside tools to proactively engage with drivers fosters a win-win situation. A win for the organisation through the impact on productivity, operational costs, client service, and let's not forget, profit. A win for drivers as they become a highly valued, highly trained member of the workforce. Highly paid? Well, many organisations incentivise individuals, teams and management for the achievement of safety-related goals and metrics as part of a wider set of KPIs. The consequences of road traffic collisions are far-reaching, and apart from the personal trauma, cause massive burden and administrative distraction on teams through having to complete reports, organise replacement vehicles, organise repairs, hire drivers. The management time should not be underestimated. Some have outsourced these activities at even greater expense. The financial costs are huge, both in terms of direct repair costs, potential insurance-related payouts and premium hikes, impacts to an organisation's brand and customer perception, but most importantly, the employee-related costs associated with recuperation from a crash and rehabilitation. Our experience shows collision-related costs alone being between £1,000 and £3,000 per vehicle per year, depending on the type of operation. From a legal perspective, the FTA Van Excellence programme in the UK did an amazing job of bringing the reality of a serious vehicle collision to light with its One Fateful Day series in 2017. The briefings and accompanying videos highlighted the legal issues surrounding a road traffic collision, charges against the driver, charges against the company directors, loss of operational capabilities, loss of brand image. The personal costs are certainly the most impactful, causing massive trauma to driver and potential victims' lives and that of their families. Everybody knows someone who has been killed or injured in a road traffic collision. Nobody wants themselves or their loved ones to be victim. Neither do they want to be the driver in question or the manager responsible. So what does it take to deliver a culture of safety? I really like this quote from one of our clients, Brian Knowles. He differentiates between a value and a priority. And he says, our culture of safety is our number one value. It's never to be sacrificed under any circumstances for a priority like getting a load there on time. I think it's a key statement in highlighting the need for operations who are typically in firefighting mode to be aligned with company values at all times. So how does this guy feel before he gets behind the wheel today? Is he focused or distracted? Is he rested? Is he healthy and alert? Is he feeling valued or resentful? Is he bought into the company values? Is he a lone wolf? One thing is for sure, he or she doesn't start the day intending to cause a collision. When you look at 90% of motor vehicle collisions being caused by human error, it becomes abundantly clear that the creation of a culture of safety is not to be treated lightly. It's first and foremost a behavioural change programme with a wide range of leading indicators and outcomes which benefit individuals, the organisation and society as a whole. Those who have delivered behavioural change will know that it's a hard thing to land, but when approached in the right way, with dedication from the top table, and always with the end in mind, it can be a paradigm-changing and very rewarding exercise. Two Lytics clients, James Schultz and Brian Ficlo, published a great book in 2017, Leading People Safely, How to Win on the Business Battlefield. And they recognise some important features of great safety programmes from their own deployments and sharing best practice with their peers. And they showed that the leadership skills required to successfully lead safety are the same skills needed to lead outstanding organisations. Two are very intrinsic. And the ones that stand out for me here are standardised and disciplined procedures, and importantly, this personal accountability. They also went on to proclaim 4 foundational beliefs. One is, and one that really resonates, is that the best action an organisation can take to align and engage employees is to make them feel valued. And a culture of positive safety does just that. And the journey to safety excellence has to be a crusade, not a casual endeavour, because it's people change, and people don't normally change to this level of magnitude. So there's got to be energy around the vision, and it has to be leadership driven. It can't just be delegated. So here's why we think it's important. Obviously, this example here is something that merits really strong action on behalf of the employer. The drivers are absolutely distracted in the vehicle, and a collision there was very, very closely avoided. This video is slightly different. What was important to the driver here was trying to make good progress. You can see him looking out into the outside lane. Gets too close to the vehicle in front, and luckily has somewhere to take his heavy goods vehicle. But what could he learn from that incident? That's why we think coaching is so important. This is a very similar situation. Think what this driver, who by the way escapes with cuts and bruises, could have learned from the previous video. It's the same situation, the same desire to press on, but a very different outcome. So I'd just like to finish by running through 7 best practices for fleet safety that we've learned from Lytics clients over the last 20 years. The first is the creation of a compelling ROI and the ability to win and retain the support of senior leadership. Safety is not a revenue generating department, it's an expense. As a leader, you need to bring in programs that will lower those expenses, and that's the ROI. A reduction in collision cost is a great example. There's an example ROI case here from some Lytics white papers, but it doesn't have to be about technology. Focusing on procedures and policies is a great way to start. For example, limiting journey duration without a break, and that's for cars as well as commercial vehicles. Limiting journey length and enforcing alternative transport modes such as train or plane. Enforcing overnight rest. How many execs drive 3 to 4 hours for a long meeting and then drive home again? Phone usage. Consider the effect on concentration whilst talking on the phone. Many organisations totally ban the use of mobiles once behind the wheel. Culture. Elevate employee engagement with a strong safety culture. You need to create a sense of urgency. Use case studies to drive this forward. Build a coalition. Safety breaks through departmental boundaries, so take the team on the journey with you. Have a vision and broadcast it widely. Get some short-term wins, and most importantly, empower frontline managers. Make them accountable for progress and give them the tools to achieve. Something we're keen on is continuous coaching or continuous feedback. It keeps drivers bought into the safety culture and is much more effective than episodic training. Focus on remediation and retention here, though, rather than discipline. Communications. You cannot over-communicate a safety program. Really important to boost buy-in with effective communications. Use all the tools at your fingertips. And importantly, make sure it's two-way. Take feedback from the drivers. They're the guys in the field every day. Use data analytics to help you identify and focus on the most important areas of risk, so you can measure progress and ultimately keep improvement. That continual improvement is really important. And if you're using technology, the economies of scale that automation brings, make sure your different technologies play nicely with each other. Make sure they speak to one another. Do on-vehicle systems speak to your telematics systems, for example? And finally, accountability. Make sure everybody knows their role within the safety program and how they'll be measured to set a clear path to reach your safety goals. Okay, the bottom line, the costs of not focusing on driver safety are huge. Bringing a strong safety culture to an organisation can have far-reaching benefits above and beyond financial alone. A strong business case, mind you, with a clearly defined accountability gets commitment from the top and buy-in from the front line, and your employees will thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, it's Scott Gould here. I hope you're enjoying this webinar series, and we're now going to be talking about what is effective leadership. So let's ask the question, what is it to be an effective leader? We all know leadership is very, very important, but what is it that effective leaders do? Leaders that achieve the things that they are seeking to act out. Well, if you go online and you search for leadership, you'll generally get a screen like this. And here you see lots of people, generally white men, and older white men, standing aloof from the crowd, arms folded. They're representing this sense of being separate, maybe even better. They have charisma, they have power. And of course, when we think about leadership, normally these are the popular ideas that we have. We think of effective leaders as visionary, powerful people, strong people. We think of them as having confidence. They're highly confident. They are sure of themselves. And we also think of them as people who have the right answers. Go to them and they know what to do. They are the fount of all knowledge. The problem with this is that's not reality. In reality, the leaders that we like, the leaders that we follow, the leaders that we really engage with are themselves engaging leaders. Now, yes, they might be visionary. They might be confident. They might well have the right answers, but they also might not be a very visionary person. They might not be a terribly confident person. They might not even have the answers. Maybe they just know some good questions. But if you are engaging, that is what will make you an effective leader. Of course, we're thinking about fleet management here. We're thinking about lots of people who are looking to you to make decisions, to provide guidance. And what will make you effective as a leader in this scenario is your ability to be an engaging leader. So what does that mean? Let's look at 3 examples of engaging leaders that I found particularly meaningful in my life. And I imagine you probably heard some of them too. The first is Major Dick Winters. He famously was a major paratrooper during D-Day and in World War II. The thing about him is when we think of military leaders, we often think of these Churchill-like figures, strong, bold, visionary once again. The amazing thing about Dick Winters was he was a very soft-spoken, humble man. And there's a particular story that describes the power of modeling and being an engaging leader. He and his troop were on D-Day, came up against a particularly well-fortified chateau, and they had to try and storm it, and they were not really succeeding. And normally you'd expect the leaders here to be at the back shouting what to do, but he got up and in the midst of intense fire led the way. And it was amazing because his platoon said they felt safe with him, even though they were in the midst of severe danger. And that's something that leaders do, is they model the way. As Dick Winters says himself, they lead from the front. Say, follow me, and then lead the way. What they don't do, which is what unengaging leaders do, is say, go and do this, but I'm not doing likewise. They say, follow me and do likewise. So the first thing of an engaging leader is they model. They really do lead the way. A second fantastic leader that I'm sure, again, you're familiar with is Condoleezza Rice. She was Secretary of State under President George Bush. And she had this incredible ability to navigate what was a very tricky situation with Iraq and American foreign policy. And she said, leading in a complex world means recognizing the simple things you can do to make things better. See, what engaging leaders do is they get involved in what the needs are of the person. Say somebody's on the phone to you, they're saying, what do I do about this? I don't know what to do. They help facilitate that person to find a simple solution. They help them reduce things down to ease, simplicity, rather than leaving it in complexity. An unengaging leader, an ineffective leader, will say, well, just do this. It won't help the person figure out the way for themselves. So they've not really empowered that person to find their way through again. Or what an ineffective and unengaging leader might do is say, well, this is what the policy says, just do this. But engaging leaders are able to facilitate things. They're able to be politicians in particular scenarios, and that is a critical skill of an engaging leader. Finally, the best leaders, those effective leaders, those engaging leaders are leaders that enable others in their leadership. They enable others to get things done. Sure, you're familiar again with Lao Tzu, a famous strategist and thinker, and he said a leader is best when people barely know he or she exists, when his or her work is done, their aim fulfilled, and the people will say, we did it ourselves. Now, I think at this point, all of us can think of those great leaders that helped us. They weren't necessarily visionary. They weren't necessarily highly confident. They weren't necessarily those with the right answers, but they helped us find our way to a solution. They enabled us. And by enabling us, by helping us engage, because they engaged with us, they were able to help us find the solution, and we were truly led and empowered and enabled by them. Think about it. You don't want people calling you up every day asking for solutions, your team coming around you asking you what to do. You want them to be able to do it themselves, and for them to be able to say, we did it ourselves, because that's what truly empowering, effective leaders do. So what is effective leadership? It is engaging leadership. I think if you can take away one thing, it would be, if you want to be an effective leader, you don't need to be a great visionary. You don't need to be highly confident, although you might be. You don't need to have all the right answers, although you might have them. What you need to do is simply engage with the issue at hand. The team member comes to you, engage with their query, model the way for them, facilitate them finding a simple solution, enable them to go and get it done. If you are facing a particularly difficult day, you've got some real challenges ahead of you. You've got to navigate difficult situations or figure out better ways of getting things done. The effective leader is one who engages with that issue, doesn't stick their head in the sand, doesn't just look to the rule book, doesn't just stick with policy, doesn't just leave people to figure it out. They engage, they facilitate, they model, they enable others. Well, that's me done. I hope you enjoy the rest of this webinar. If you have any further questions on engaging leadership, I'd be very happy to talk to you. That's, of course, a picture of me, and there are my details. But again, I hope that if you can take away just one thing from me today, it would be to go forth and engage. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Patterson. I'm the head of marketing at DriveTech. I'm delighted to be involved in this webinar, and thanks to Brake and Global Fleet Champions for inviting me to participate. Firstly, just a very quick summary of our business to introduce you. DriveTech offer a range of driver risk management services. We have two operations in effect, a core UK business and an international operation for multi-country clients. We're part of the AA, the Automobile Association as was known, so we're part of the UK's largest motoring business. The services we provide include driver license checking, online driver assessments and driver profiling, e-learning, on-road coaching and training, and of course, measurement support for our clients. You can find out more on our website, so I won't go on any more now. We all know this, I'm sure, but the key in terms of embedding a culture of safety is, without becoming too neurotic about it, that it is dangerous on our roads, and concentration and focus is important. And I'll leave driver distractions for another day, as that's a subject of its own right. Just some statistics. I'm sure you're all generally well versed in the scale of the issue, but to highlight, the World Health Organization calculate that there are currently 1.35 million deaths worldwide a year, and that's nearly 3,700 people dying on the roads every day. And specific to the business community, it's estimated that up to 25% of this toll, and more if you include commuting, are work-related incidents. So, onto leadership. The accountability ladder I'm introducing you to now Are you or your staff or individuals a leader or a follower? And the question to ask yourself in this visual is, are you accountable for your actions or are you a victim? We use this slide within DriveTech really to just question people's individual values and their own dedication. I suppose you could summarize it as personal or individual leadership. You can see the victim behavioral traits below the line on the ladder and the accountable behaviors above. I feel this is a lot like a self-fulfilling prophecy and about personal attitude and individual drive. Well, in road safety, as in any walk of life, this, in my opinion, is a key principle to embed in your organizations, to encourage personal ownership and avoid what I call the waiting room syndrome, i.e. waiting in the crowd for someone else to take the lead. And we'd prefer to encourage everyone, including road safety issues, to take action themselves. Moving on to how organizations might evolve in their safety leadership, in this graphic, we've adapted what is known as the DuPont-Bradley curve, and it will reveal gradually to you. From the left, you can see an ideal metamorphosis from a reactive style within a business, where things are done by instinct, or by compliance, or delegated by management. But in actual fact, often there is seen to be a management apathy. As perhaps there is a more imposed supervision, instead of a reactive style, you end up becoming more dependent. So there is active management, there are rules, there is discipline, and there is some degree of control. So things are beginning to be controlled and imposed on the staff. The next stage in an ideal model is independent activity, i.e. you self-manage. So there is a personal commitment, in this instance to road safety, self-care, the development of good habits and your own values. And then at the end, what we hope embeds in organizations is a team spirit, interdependent within the team. So everyone across the businesses understands, for example, the importance of road safety. They help others. There's networking, there is support systems, and there is a company pride across the business about people's road safety performance. I'm sure some of this content is teaching Granny to suck eggs, but what I've shown here are just some illustrations of key things that should be prevalent in a business to make sure that road safety is on the leadership agenda and imprinted on people's minds across the business. From left to right, of course, a basic requirement would be a driver safety policy that is actually clear, published, and bought into by everyone who drives on or for business. In the middle of this graphic are interesting communication devices, which we would encourage people to update and refresh within businesses. Interesting infographics that talk about distracted driving, as the example is there. Or I've been cheeky enough to include a brake device, which is the Road Safety Week campaign. Personally, I think it's excellent, but we've used that within our own business to raise awareness for a week at a time. So pick on themes, refresh the communication, and ideally come up with something different to keep it on the agenda. And I've even been naughty enough to include a DriveTech white paper. This one happens to be about autonomous vehicles. It's our most recent. But anything like that that might be circulated within the business keeps the discussion area of road safety valid and prominent. Embedding a safety culture throughout the organization is important, and this slide is a very, very simple illustration to just indicate that it's important to have positive messaging for the business. This is obviously a sign that you might see on the way in or out of this organization's premises, but it's a constant message for business office staff and visitors that road safety is clearly on the agenda and a daily reminder as they come and go. And this is a device really to say, keep things prominent in people's eyes and keep a regular message. Daily is brilliant. In terms of hierarchical leadership in an organization, of course, businesses should always act on facts as well as emotional triggers. And here we're suggesting there are some tangible and measurable facts that come to the fore to reinforce and embed road safety high on a business's agenda. From mainly at the top of this chart, safety requirements, some of which are compliance and have to be conformed to, health and safety regulations, occupational health and safety, and also just basic duty of care to your drivers, down through cost efficiencies. So these are tangible measures that you can clearly point to and say that by adopting road safety policies and procedures, we've actually been able to identify reduced costs, so it's saving the company money. Down to sustainability, issues around CO2 emissions, the people, the planet versus profitability, and maintaining a corporate image. They're all important to make sure they're on the leadership agenda and of course cascaded and shared with staff. A very quick case study I'm showing you now is one of our own customers, AstraZeneca, who've worked with DriveTech since 2013. And a very quick summary is to indicate that they have embedded a strong road safety culture, of course, with a little help from DriveTech. Examples, training is a definite part of their new staff induction. Online driver assessments are used to identify individuals' driver risk exposure. On-road driver training is provided on a regular and revisited basis, and all driver information is available through one single portal. More importantly, perhaps, they monitor their results. Collisions per annum are now half their global target of 5 collisions per million kilometres driven. Their number of injuries attributable to road collisions per annum has reduced. Blameworthy claims have reduced. Staff retention is supported by demonstrating that the company actually cares and takes this seriously. And driver statistics and insight helps AstraZeneca to drive their training requirements. The key headline messages in terms of embedding a safety culture into the leadership of the organization are as follows. Create a safety culture, make it a default behavior within the business. Build trust, a key value of a safety culture. The management team should lead by example themselves, live and breathe the message. You should listen to your employees and demonstrate that you care, otherwise people start to disbelieve the stated intent. Of course, if it's a multinational operation, which many of our customers on the international side are, it needs to suit all types of cultures, so take into consideration not all countries have the same standard approach, so make sure it's modified. The ideal is to create employee ownership. And if you remember the Bradley-DuPont curve earlier, move to the right side of the curve, get road safety embedded so inherently in the organization that people actually do it as a matter of course and talk about it openly. Make it personal and for life, not just work hours 9 till 5. And use simple but clear messaging to keep awareness up. And of course, more importantly, as long as the organization that you're in is capable and willing to measure, then make sure measurement is always on the agenda and you're working towards continuous improvement of those measures. In terms of this webinar, can't really go into a great deal more detail now, but I hope I've touched some points around leadership and key features that should come to the fore in a road safety policy. Thank you for listening, and please, keep driving safely out there, as that illustration perhaps indicates. And finally, my DriveTech contact details are here on the screen, so if you'd like to make contact or follow up outside of this webinar, please do so. I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Hello, firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Peter Milchard, board member and lead tutor for Institute of Car Fleet Management, commonly known as ICFM. ICFM was established in 1992 with the aim of establishing best practice in fleet, where the operation of a fleet is one of the most significant costs to any business. The Institute is a not-for-profit organisation which aims to promote the professionalism of fleet management via ongoing research, sharing of information, and development of social communities. We are the training body for the fleet industry and now include both car and van operations. We offer a variety of courses, all of which provide technical and leadership skills for those responsible for fleet. Introductory for those new to the industry and via online training. Certificate, both at online or tutor-led level. Diploma, which is tutor-led and considered as the black belt of fleet training. We also offer BVRLA introductory into fleet, master classes for members throughout the year, and bespoke training courses. In 2018, we trained 184 individuals, and as at the 1st of January 2019, we have 857 members. So why is training of importance? It's a true vocation, the creation of a formal qualification which should be treated no differently to other professions such as accountants with accountancy qualifications. Skills that can be benchmarked, professionalisation of an industry, nurturing future talents and leaders. Many go on to attain awards, including Fleet News and other prestigious awards. We also are involved with people development and support. However, today I would like to discuss leadership in the fleet with a focus on protecting your drivers. Before we move on, it must be recognised that we are living in a rapidly changing world and need to adapt. This slide highlights what was once a major business that is now reduced to a single museum based in Oregon. Fleet management is no different, and leadership needs to protect drivers and thus protect the business. Although, as with changes that affected the future of Blockbuster, there is now a focus on total mobility within business. This is at a time when there has been a big focus on reducing dedicated fleet resource, and the traditional role of a fleet manager is reducing at a significant pace. Resource is becoming more shared within finance, HR, compliance, and other areas, and also a greater focus on outsourcing to third-party fleet management providers. As a result, an issue of concern is a limited awareness of legal compliance. As you can see from the graphs from a recent industry survey, a high percentage of those that had limited awareness at director level. Concern must be raised that 30% of directors are working towards. However, how can this be possible in view that this is based on legal compliance? You either get it or you don't. And this indicates that those involved with fleet are struggling to gain buy-in from senior management. If senior management get it, they should have no problem in supporting it. And if they don't, they will simply focus on something else, leaving those responsible for fleet banging heads against a brick wall. Moving to the second graphic relating to HSE compliant driving at work road safety policy, only 59% answered yes. This could be an indication of senior management resistance, with possible thoughts that this will hamper the business operating as usual. For those that do have a policy, is there a clear demonstration of senior management commitment to work-related road safety? Think about your own organisation and how effective does this feature? Additionally, do you have adequate systems in place to record all fleet activity, as you would in other functions of the business, such as HSE focus on slips, trips and falls, thereby building a robust audit trail that could be referred to in the event of an investigation? From the third graphic, 43% say they don't. Focusing back to the driving at work policy, only a small number of organisations feature this as part of induction or provide overview of a driver's handbook, if this is even in place. Therefore, how can drivers then be expected to follow policies and guidelines? And this could lead to a clear case of pointless box ticking with no benefits to the business. The use of data is also an interesting point, whereby fleet operator often has significant data relating to drivers and how the vehicle is being driven. But this data must be managed and, most importantly, action taken to address aspects that are highlighted from the data. Many questions are asked of a fleet operator. Do you have telematics? With the answer as yes, but we should challenge what senior management do with the information that the system provides. This is box ticking versus real improvement through management interventions. It would seem obvious that to protect drivers, senior leadership should not be reliant on box ticking activity, and at the same time, standards within the fleet policy are not about following dictates or instruction. It's about drivers being professional, having pride in their work, and respected by the peers and managers. This could necessitate a cultural change within the business, which must be led and supported by senior management. So really, we need to influence change. It is essential that directors clearly understand the true costs to the business. A common issue is that fleet safety professionals struggle to convince those above them to give fleet risk management the attention it demands. The risk of doing nothing must be obvious to key decision makers. From the graph, many businesses are focused on growth and increased sales, although efforts to protect drivers and reduce the costs associated with the fleet can be more financially viable than simply focusing on growth. Imagine a sales director having responsibility for fleet. Educating to do things better rather than simply grow business could be difficult to influence, but it is essential. Poor driving or management of drivers leads to increased costs. Directors need to understand that these are not just everyday costs of operating a fleet. They are directly influenced by the quality of leadership and focus on fleet management. Quality leadership is the ability to influence or inspire people to achieve an objective. Leaders need to understand and buy into the objective. Strong leadership creates cultures where the desire to achieve becomes ingrained in the workforce. It is also shown by clearly communicating a vision that others can buy into and ensuring that those in charge lead by example. Some leaders don't buy into the vision themselves, so it does not get communicated to drivers. The best run fleets have driver handbooks and regular communications. Without it, indicates that management does not really care about the message. So finally, and to summarise, we need to recognise that to gain success in protecting drivers is reliant on strong leadership, clearly communicating a vision, providing adequate resource, true costs need to be understood. We need to monitor costs. And a final thought to consider, does this happen in your organisation? And how can you as an individual influence necessary change to protect your drivers? ICFM are here to assist, and you can find information here. Thank you very much for listening.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Telfer, and my presentation discusses the leadership initiatives at Gateshead regarding driver safety. We have addressed driver training for a number of years. However, I would like to highlight a contract we recently brought back into house, which utilised over 200 vehicles and 200 drivers. The purpose of this was to bring these drivers up to the current standards of the drivers that we have in-house presently. These drivers are also ambassadors and leaders with regard to driver training on all of our vehicles throughout the whole of the borough. We also need to ensure driver compliance to maintain our operator's licence, and to achieve this, we are members of the Van Excellence Scheme. Poor compliance record for vans was quite apparent on this new contract. So to ensure continuity of service, the whole driver training programme was decanted out to these new drivers. And the council was also at risk for non-compliance also. These slides illustrate the standard of driving when we brought these vehicles back in-house. And as you can see from this, these open back lorries all had equipment that was either insecure or dangerously loaded. This also was evidence on grounds maintenance vehicles also, from tree shrubbery to branches that could easily be blown off the vehicle if it wasn't secured, and could cause injury to either passerby or cyclists or indeed other motorists. This also went into closed vehicles over on housing maintenance vehicles. And as you can see in the top left-hand photograph, there's even a loose hammer down to various other items that could easily become dislodged and injure either the driver. The reason why I'm highlighting this is because we didn't want to step away from any of the issues or to keep them in-house to ensure that everyone was aware fully of their need to comply with requirements of ensuring road safety. The controls procedures we put in place was a duty of care for both the council operators and the public at large, and obviously to control costs. we introduced similar planned maintenance scheme that we had for our existing vehicles, and this obviously would protect our operator's license and comply with all DVSA requirements also. To ensure the compliance, we enhanced the driver handbook. We had a road safety statement policy, which was signed off by our chief executive and other directors, right through to service managers and supervisors. All of the managers and supervisors who were controlling these drivers all attended operator license and managerial course through the Freight Transport Association. So they had an overarching understanding of road safety initiatives. The service managers were also responsible for the complete operation of the vehicle and the driver. So they were to ensure the vehicle was fit for purpose. They also carried out daily checks on random to ensure drivers were carrying out their daily checks. They also had to ensure the load distribution and load security was correct, and that drivers had a full understanding of axle weights, and that vehicle cleanliness was maintained, that drivers completed their defect reports, and all logbooks were completed correctly. The daily checks for drivers were fairly standard across all of the industry, but we had to ensure that these were completed without exception, even when drivers moved into different vehicles during the day. So they all had to complete a defect book and understand the procedures that we had in place. And managers were also responsible for ensuring that those driver records were also maintained. To back up this and to give it some credence, we utilised the survey that was carried out by Brake, which they had identified throughout this survey that over 58 people had been killed with the contributing factor was vehicle maintenance or lack of maintenance. And the respondents from that survey were quite astonishing that daily checks, 17% of drivers relied on others, and over 16% never checked lights at all. And also, what astonished me was that over 50% of drivers only check brakes at the MOT or an annual service. And 27%, something as simple as checking oil and water, relied on others to carry out that activity. To ensure the load that was secured in a correct fashion, we carried out comprehensive on-the-job training to illustrate both in classroom, DVD laptops, and practical training to ensure compliance. We utilised a local weighbridge, so the driver had a full understanding of the capacity of the load and who we would go to for further advice, and to ensure that any equipment that wasn't necessary on the vehicle had to be removed. And this had to be backed up by safe systems of work and risk assessments. We all emphasised to the driver it was his responsibility to ensure the load was safe and secure, and there was no compromise in ensuring that he completed his daily tasks at the expense of not ensuring that the vehicle was safe. All of whether it was secure equipment or it was a load to carry out the job, that had to be secured in the same kind of fashion using the correct methods. We also went into the detail of load distribution and to ensure that the load was evenly spaced between the axles, and that also all of the rhino tubes were correctly mounted and the correct equipment was placed in those also. The correct use of internal racking was also adopted, and we spoke at length with the drivers and managers to ensure that the correct equipment for carrying the loads was acquired to ensure compliance. In this, all of these initiatives were achieved by comprehensive driver training out on the road with the driver for 45 minutes, his procedure for daily checks, and that was utilising the SAFED approach, safe and effective driver training. So not only were we operating the vehicle safely, we were driving it in an economical manner for MPG, and all of the drivers got fuel monitoring reports back to ensure that they were getting the most optimum fuel returns. All of the fleet is speed limited at 56 mile an hour, and that was to drive home every day that someone was out there. And if they were driving in an area where the maximum speed limit was 60 or 70, constant reminder of that there was speed control measures in place. So all of our drivers are also on telematics. For Lightfoot also we utilise, so we understand where the drivers are and their driver behaviour. We also utilise toolbox talks and DVD training. And one particular DVD I can't overemphasise, we've used this DVD since the outset of training, was the Too Young to Die video and DVD that's available from Brake, and that deals with the aftermath. We're all conditioned to see vehicle crashes and the aftermath of that, and we've been conditioned to accept that. However, when there's an interview with a relative or a family member or a friend who has lost someone due to a driving incident, then that brings it more home, and it has a much more stronger effect on the driver. It also utilises the FTA DVD for driver walk-round checks to ensure we don't end up in a situation with the tyres that are illustrated on the right-hand side of the screen. And hasten to add, that's not one of our tyres, that's one from a library. But the whole idea of driver walk-round checks is it avoids that type of wear, which is clearly over a period of time. We also utilise the best practice guide for van operators, and it's a similar guide for cars, and that's freely available. And also the FTA can supply daily walk-round check cards also. And finally, at every exit gate and at every fuel pump station that we have within our depots, that's the reminder for each driver as they leave the depot to ensure that your phone's off, that you don't speed, and that you're wearing your seatbelt. And that's constantly reminded on regular toolbox talks. And that completes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Graham. We've now come to the end of the formal presentations, and it is now time for our Q&A session. It's not too late to put forward your questions, just please use the chat box. So first, I'd like to thank you all for engaging in today's poll, which I'm just going to get up on the screen for you now. So the question was, is your organisation doing everything it can to enable road safety leadership at all levels? So as you can see on the screen, 50% said yes, 40% said no, and 10% if you responded with don't know. So what I'd like to do is just invite Peter from ICFM just to comment on that with your views, Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, just going back to my webinar presentation, and a couple of the presenters have sort of been focused on preaching to the converted, which in large cases we are. I think that poll, the straw poll, just shows that we still have issues with trying to get the message across to senior leadership. Most of us will probably be trying our level best, but 40% of people perceive that their own organisation isn't achieving at all levels, and then obviously 10% don't know. So it just really highlights the importance of why we need to influence that change moving forward. And I think really just to bring the question set, moving it forward, really, how can we change and how can we influence that change?
Definitely. How do you think we can help senior management better understand any issues around legal compliance? How can we get, those managers, those directors high up to understand those issues?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it seems to be the real struggle is to get those senior management to really understand and to buy into why we need to change. The importance, as I say, going back to the webinar, it's the focus of the role of a fleet manager has sort of not so much been diluted, but different people in the organisation really have influence over that change, and it's quite difficult. I suppose coming back to the ICFM, where we get frustrated is we know that there's a huge volume of people out managing vehicle fleets that really need some focus of training, because it might be, just as an example, an HR department that really then is asked to look after the fleet, and no real previous experience of what a fleet consists of, and facilities management. I always use the analogy that sometimes there's more focus on a facilities management side of the cost and the value of toilet rolls rather than the cost and value of safe driving, and it's trying to get that influencing change across. Sometimes it works with finance people, because when you can identify the true cost of not doing things, it sometimes becomes a light bulb moment. But I think as a whole industry sector, we really are struggling to get senior leadership to buy into the importance of fleet management. And I suppose also from a risk management perspective, when we look at corporate manslaughter and the big focus of that a fair few years ago, that really started to be a big focus, we haven't necessarily seen a huge sort of impact of that actually having on the fleet arena. So I suppose it hasn't really reached the importance level at director level. So we're trying to raise an issue before it becomes an issue, and I just think a lot of organisations are focusing elsewhere rather than the costs and the safety initiatives, and actually cost reduction of the fleet overall. So it's a hard nut to crack, but we need to achieve that. We need to influence that change by having the right leadership style to influence that change of people that may not necessarily want to feel as though they have to change their focus on fleet.
Definitely. Thank you, Peter, and hopefully this webinar can help with that as well. So thank you for your time, Peter.
No problems, that's fine.
So we'll now go to Scott. So Scott, thank you very much for your presentation. Really interesting insight on what is effective leadership. Are there any potential hurdles we need to be aware of when trying to shift the leadership style within our organisation? What do you think the main challenges might be?
Most organisations, a minute ago, Peter was talking about, senior management thinking very much in terms of numbers about, driver safety and fleet safety, and not giving more care perhaps to systems and processes than on the ground, realities. And a lot of traditional organizations, long-lasting organizations, historically do take a more traditional command and control approach to leadership. The irony is that throughout all time, people have always loved the leaders that actually get in the arena with their followers and make it happen, right? We've always liked those people as leaders. And so the myth is that we don't want that leaders who do such things, operating in the soft skills arena, but actually those are the real skills: being able to engage with people, being able to make individuals feel safe in the midst of difficult scenarios is real quality leadership. And I think therefore what the challenge is to be confident enough to say our business is about people, our employees are people, our fleet is people, and I'm going to stand up for those people, and I'm going to do what matters for those people, and to not be ashamed or embarrassed about that, because actually that's what everybody wants in the end. They might often say they want different things, but that's what senior leadership want. That's what people on the front line want, is people they can trust, people that own situations in a very human manner and get things done. Doesn't mean you put away the rule book. It just means that you engage with people, not just policy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Scott. So I'd now like to come to Colin Patterson, who's joining us from Drive Tech. Can you hear me okay, Colin?
I can, Sarah, thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. How should organisations encourage employee ownership of the road safety programmes?
I think included in my presentation, but more importantly everyone else's, it's about people. And I think people, and I'm included, find processes and policies and documents, I suppose by default, a bit boring. And the most important thing, keep it simple and engage people. So bring it to life, share information, do it in a novel, innovative way. This one is perhaps a bit of a toss of the coin and a bit Marmite. Some like gratuitous pictures of death on the road, others don't. My view probably at the moment is show positive pictures, show improvement, show safety in a tangible way. But the most important thing is to engage humans and talk to them rather than send out policies. Asking people to sign policies is one thing, and that's important because you must read, digest and commit to the company's cause. However, doing that on its own, and I think Scott just mentioned it, it's about people, and anyone can sign that document without any great passion or engagement. It's then following it up and leaders and other people in the business showing an absolute passion about it, day in, day out, talking about it, showing videos, pictures, any form of interaction to just keep people's profile on road safety high. Make sure they remind them that it's dangerous out there. You know, obviously most of the presenters on here have a committed focus on road safety anyway, so to say we do it in our own organisations probably a bit trite, but what we try and do is encourage organisations we work with not only to do the good stuff, which is regular driver training, regular education, and all of that sort of, if you like, formal professional stuff, but it's also to share content on a daily basis. And I know I picked on it in the presentation, but Road Safety Week or any other campaign that is capable of being brought to the attention of staff, bring it into the daily work. What's the focus this week? By the way, it's Road Safety Week. Pay attention, share information, and just get people participating positively, carrot rather than stick.
Brilliant, thanks, Colin. Scott would like to just add a further comment to your response, Colin. Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, Colin, I mean, what you're saying there was really important, and I wanted to add a complementary point, particularly touching on just a matter of psychology and neuroscience, that when it comes to getting people to engage with things, you know, Colin mentioned, you know, photos. Another way of doing it is showing positives. But one very, very powerful way of getting people to actually realize the importance of something is to quite simply let them experience it. So an example in an unrelated field is something called the Wigan Deal. The Council of Wigan have done a fantastic job of engaging their employees and their community around a particular kind of change management campaign. But they trained 100% of their staff, not by video training or something like that, but by those staff members going into an immersive experience where they got to meet actors, and actors portrayed different members of the community. The lesson that we can learn here is that if you really want to get senior members engaged, sometimes it might be as simple as taking a senior staff member out with you one day for half a day, something like that. But I imagine that them doing that probably be more effective. And the reason why, quite simply is because when we experience something firsthand and we're in the moment and our senses are all engaged, on a neuroscience level, what happens is there's more adrenaline and dopamine in our brains, and that opens up the neural pathways that enables us to remember things. So quite simply, the reason why we remember rich immersory things is because they're rich and immersory, right? It's just kind of obvious. But there's a nice little just addition there to Colin's point is, in addition to thinking about the negatives or the positives, just see if you can get them to experience something of it with you. That will go a massive way towards people being engaged.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for joining us today, Graham. And we do have a question for you. Do you have any recommendations for making sure safety procedures stick with drivers?
Just never to sit back and just think that you've completed an exercise and that's the end of it. What we do here is we constantly have 15-to-1 panels with drivers. We meet them at 2 box talks on a monthly basis, and driving is always a topic. So we constantly reinforce this, which was clearly evident in the presentation, that when we took on this other contract in-house, that clearly wasn't happening in an organisation to an effect. So to try to bring those drivers up to that level was a steep learning curve again, because I thought we'd plateaued out and we were cruising and we were able to engage with drivers, but it felt like we were starting the whole process again. So it's constant engagement with drivers and never let it off your agenda. As I say, every month we readdress driver training in some form.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Graham. Well, thank you to all of you for attending today's webinar sponsored by Lytics. We hope you enjoyed it and that the webinar has equipped you with useful information that will help you work towards our common goal, which of course is safe and healthy mobility in fleets. To view our upcoming webinars, please visit globalfleetchampions.org. If you would like to discuss the content of today's webinar further, then please do join our Global Fleet Champions LinkedIn group. I'd like to say a huge thank you to today's presenters for your hard work and efforts in creating your presentations, and also a huge thank you to our sponsor, Lytics. We hope you can join us again soon, and thank you very much again. Enjoy the rest of your day.